Please stand. My brothers and sisters, our good news this morning has been recorded for us by John. Jesus says to his disciples, "As the Father loves me, so I love you. Remain in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and remain in his love. I have told you this so that your joy may be complete, and that your joy may be complete and fulfilled in you. This is my commandment. Love one another as I love you. No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. I no longer call you slaves, because the slave does not know what his master is about. I have called you friends, because I have told you everything I have heard from my Father. It was not you who chose me. I have chosen you and appointed you to go and bear fruit that will remain, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give you. This I command you, love one another." The gospel of Christ. Praise be to you, O Christ. Please be seated. I've been trying to better understand what is this rise in anti-Semitism that we're seeing both in our country and pretty much somewhat displayed, across the entire world. I'm trying to better understand, what is the motivation? What is the factor? What is the starting point for such, anti-Semitic feelings and sentiment? And of course, as you begin to look at that, you end up going back in history and you end up seeing how this has been sort of part of the Jewish people's reality, from the very beginnings when God had chosen them to be his people. So as you read through all this, and you read especially, through, Germany and Hitler, there's a lot of different motivating factors around that. A lot of it had to do with economics. A lot of it had to do with the fact that people rally around, putting down or focusing on one group or one person, and they find strength in putting that group down. And so it is a point of cohesion for the rest of the folks to sort of bond together. There's all this back and forth that, when you end up looking at it, it really led me to this one simple conclusion, and I am by far an expert, nor am I extremely well read in this area, I'm not. But it seems to me that the Jewish people have always been put down because, from what I can experience and understand culturally, religiously, even in the sense of government, the Jewish people know who they are. There is a sense that they have, that they are, chosen by God. They are God's chosen people. And the differentiation around Israel is that it is really a theocracy in a lot of ways. It is a culture that is based on religion, and the religion is fused within the culture, and the culture is fused into religion. You can't separate, Judaism from any Jew, from their lifestyle or their understanding or how they see themselves. I came away with the sense that I think the problem that we might all have, and people who are anti-Semitic might have, is that maybe it bothers us that they are so clear in their beliefs, that they're so centralized. Now, I'm not talking about individuals, and I'm not talking about leadership, and I'm not talking about time. People are people, and we're all broken, and we're all struggling along, and whether you're Jewish or whatever the case might be, humanity is going to have its flaws, so that's going to come across. However, as a whole, our Jewish brothers and sisters know exactly who they are because God has called them to be his people. It made me then reflect upon what is our problem as Christians. Do we not feel or see within ourselves a clarity about who we are as disciples of Jesus? And see, I think this is the question that John is trying to address here. I think John's community is asking John, okay, so we're sort of just disciples, like we're just supposed to be disciples, so we're just disciples of Jesus. And John points out that no, we're not just disciples, we're friends. Ironically, there is little distinction between Jesus' day and our day about what we consider a friend. It typically is that person or persons that immediately under what we consider family is the next rung of a relationship that we have with others. It's the same in Jesus' day as it is with us. John's gospel is the only gospel that uses the word friends as many times as it does. I believe it's 6 or 7 times in the Gospel of John. John's entire point of this is that we're not born into this. We're sort of selected to come into this, which he says, you have not chosen me, I've chosen you. We're sort of in this relationship, but this relationship is meant to be a bond, that exemplifies and exhibits that of being a friend, a deep relationship. So, I would ask you to just take 5 seconds now and think about what is it that you look for in a friend? What does friendship mean to you? I think for most of us, it has some point of being there for the other person, right? I mean, I am extremely blessed to have a wide array of people in my life that I know if I picked up a phone at any time, or Donna picked up a phone, or Arthur picked up a phone at any time and said we needed their presence, they would drop everything and come. I know that. I know that of them. And equally, we for them. And indeed, some of these people we don't have regular interaction with. We just have that bond where that that's what you do. That's the connection, right? And there's no questioning about it. It is just simply what it is. I mean, there have been times that Donna and I have been at the birth of children where their own families aren't there, and Donna and I are like downstairs with balloons and a big stuffed bear going, this is so exciting, But for us, it's the bond of friends, right? It's that deep level. There is this connection. So there is some level of communication, but it is really about a deep sense of commitment one to another, and it is mutual. It is a mutual relationship. Friendship's not friendship if you're the only one being the friend, right? Friendship is friendship if you have tested the waters, they have tested the waters with you, and you have both proven yourself to be trustworthy to have the name and the title of being a friend. And so I think for us, as with Jesus, as with John, John's using this word friend to be very specific. Jesus is clearly not looking for slaves in a relationship. We're not disciplined. We're not disciplined or feared into loving one another because Jesus tells us we have to do that. And if we don't do that, then there is this place called hell, which we typically have with flames and a guy with red thing and a pitchfork. And that's not the motivation here. For John's understanding of Jesus, it is that we are first and foremost friends. That Jesus has done something for us, and now we're responding back to Jesus. And our activity of loving is simply because we have first experienced that love ourselves. And, John is talking to a community now that is 95 years after the life, death, resurrection, and ascension of Jesus. This is theology that has been developed. This is a thought process that John's community has as they're writing this gospel to better understand exactly how and what Jesus means and who we are in relationship to Jesus. So, as with all friendships, there are going to be times that we have difficulties and challenges. There's going to be times we're going to fail the other person. We are. And in the midst of all that, the friendship, though, if you notice, no matter how bad a friendship can be or whatever the experience is within the friendship, you will find yourself more closely inclined to take that person back because of the history that you have, because of the bond that's there, that one situation or another simply can't eradicate or decimate that. And so I think John is sort of trying to get his disciples and therefore us to understand that we have this honored position of being called a friend of Jesus. That is our identity. That who we are is not just about being a disciple. Because I don't know about you, but there's plenty of disciples, right? When you go and you want to learn construction, right? When you want to learn how to do any type of, arts or manual or crafting or whatever, you're always sort of put under a master who knows what they're doing, and you're a disciple to that, right? We see this all the time, perhaps with jujitsu and in the Asian arts, of self-defense and health and all. You're put under somebody, you're a disciple, right? But John's going beyond that. He's not saying that we are just disciples. In fact, he dismisses that and he calls us friends. Friends. And I'd like you to take some time during this week and consider what that means of how Jesus thinks and feels about us. But then also, what is our responsibility? What is our response to that friendship? What is it that we should be identifying this friendship to be so central and focused of who we are and what we're all about? What is it that is distinct about you and I? Because according to John, none of us would be sitting here this morning if Jesus had not selected us to be here. That's the gospel. We are chosen. We have not chosen God. God has chosen us. We have not chosen Jesus. Jesus has chosen us to be his friends. What does that mean? What does that mean? Arthur's party's coming up, and if you look at our Rolodex, especially around Christmas time, it's crazy, right? I mean, we just hundreds of cards, right? However, the people that were invited to Arthur's party are those that we consider closest to us, friends of us. Not that we don't love everybody else, we do, but this inner circle of friendship is something that is, more directly experienced between this group and us. And so I think for Jesus to be considering us his friend is incredibly a powerful image of relationship that you and I should take some time to consider, because much as the Jewish people see themselves as God's chosen race, you and I are Jesus's friends. And there's real meaning and purpose to that. He even goes on and Jesus says, by being my friend, whatever you go and ask whatever you want of the Father, and the Father will recognize that you're a friend of mine, right? Tell me we don't do this all the time. If there's a car that needs to be fixed or, something happens on your property, you need an electrician, right? You reach out to someone who knows someone, right? And you sort of say, hey, can you help me out? I have this situation, right? And it's because you're a friend of the other person that they respond and do that, right? Because they don't want to let their friend out. In much the same dynamic, that's what Jesus is saying here, that we're friends of his, and therefore the Father listens to us because we are friends of Jesus's. I'm not sure we see ourselves as friends. I think we see ourselves more often as slaves. that somehow we are mandated and dictated that this on a Sunday, or our prayer life, or a relationship with God is something we have to do, forced upon us. Because if not, whatever, bad karma, something will happen, or we won't get into heaven, whatever that means, all of that. I think we've been trained to think of ourselves as more like slaves of God's instead of friends of God. And I think this was really clear yesterday. Don and I, we went to a First Communion. And, they're adorable, They're all this big. I don't know, I was never this size. So I skipped right over this part and just, here I am, this is it. But they're all this big, and you see them going up for communion, for the first time to receive, Jesus' body and blood. And you see them walk up, and they're so angelic, and they're so simple, and they're open to the experience for what it is, what they understand it to be. But then, honestly, I found myself looking around at everyone else sitting there, and there's a bit of a stagnation among the rest of us sitting there. And I'm thinking to myself, do we not understand that what is happening for them is available to us every single Sunday that we want to participate? We could come and experience that. And that same experience isn't just locked up to the sacrament at a service. It could be an experience with Jesus that you could have anywhere, simply by asking him to come and allow you to experience him. And yet you look at them, and it is intriguing because the priest's comment was, this is their first Holy Communion. I would ask you parents to make sure it's not their last, And he did mention something in a really soft, smooth way to try to nudge the families, right? Because, they all have these huge music books, and I think he was afraid they would just throw them at him, So, he's sort of inclining them to be responsive to this experience, to come back. But you could just see it among the people who were there. There just seems to be this bit of a stagnation. And I was just wondering, and it goes back to what I was starting to say, is I just don't know if we know who we are. I just don't know if we understand whose we are. I think we get lost, and we allow all this other stuff and all these other words and all this other language and all these other pastors and all this messaging to really blur what it is that we are. We are Jesus' friends. God bless you.